Hi everyone. First of all, thank you to everyone who asked a question. When I posted the video, I was nervous that I wasn't gonna get any questions, but I actually got a lot of questions. So I'm really excited about that. I don't know, I'm just really surprised. So thanks for asking questions, and I hope that you find this video helpful. First, what I wanted to do was just kind of give you an overview. A lot of people on almost every video I post on TikTok ask what my PhD is in. I am at a school for communication. The reason I applied to my PhD program and the interests that got me here were interests in communication technology and developing different languages to understand the rapidly changing media landscape. And I'm really interested in algorithms, publicly relevant algorithms. I'm also really interested in the design of technology and user experience research. So it's kind of like human-computer interaction research with some social media research, but embedded in communication algorithms that impact our everyday lives. I'm a first year, so I'm still trying to figure out what my exact interests are and what I'm going to end up writing about for my dissertation. But that's kind of the broad area that I'm in. I'm kind of in communication technology, AI, and technology design. That's what I'm interested in. I'm actually working on a TikTok project over the summer, and I can make another video about that if you would like, but I'm really excited about it. Anyway, so that's what my PhD is in. I just want to make that clear. And as for the TA teacher part of my fellowship is that each semester I'm either a TA for a professor or a research assistant for a professor. So sometimes I TA, when I TA, I basically just help that professor teach whatever class that they're teaching to the undergrads that semester. So I'm not a teacher, like a grade school teacher or anything. I know I've made a couple videos with like jokes about being a teacher, but I'm a teacher's assistant at a university. So that is that. Okay, so now to more specific questions. I just wanted to answer like the broad question about what my PhD is and what I'm interested in. And I can go into more depth in another video about that if you'd like. But I wanted to get into some of the questions that I got straight off of TikTok, straight off of that video. I don't know if I should say people's usernames. I think I will, because like shout outs are cool, and then like, I don't know, you could get more followers from this video too, so it's cool. So this is also a common question I get that I wanted to address maybe before I go into specific ones, is that I do not have a master's. I went straight from my undergraduate, my BS, from my BS degree to my PhD program. And my program is not, it's not a program where you have to get your master's in order to advance to the PhD. I enrolled in the PhD program, and I think I get a master's, not by default, but the work that I do in my first 2 years is the equivalent of a master's, if that makes sense. So I didn't go to school for a master's before I entered the PhD program. Why is it that some schools that have PhD programs require masters? Okay, so there's a couple reasons for this. Funding. So some programs that don't require masters will allow you 5 years of funding, meaning that they will support you, they'll pay your tuition and fees and stuff for the 5 years. Some PhD programs want people that have masters already because they can typically finish a PhD quicker and require less funding. So some schools you do have to have a master's to enter the PhD program. Some schools it's like an integrated program where you have to pass the master's and then enroll in the PhD program. I know I've seen some schools do that, but that's why some schools have that requirement that you have a master's, because they want to know that you have experience, research experience, that you've done work in whatever you're interested in studying before, and that you can finish the program in an allotted amount of time because you're costing them money at the end of the day. So that's why some schools do that. My school, I go to an Ivy, so we have a lot of money, and so they don't have that requirement, and they do take people straight out of undergrad, and I know some programs are not. They don't do that at all. So you just have to do research into the institution that you're interested in joining. Chief_driller, cool name, said, is it available for all courses, especially engineering and computer science? Are there platforms that offer full scholarship? So I'm not really sure about PhD programs in those disciplines, but I actually Googled it. I Googled Penn's engineering PhD program, and they do cover fees and tuition and give you a monthly stipend. So you just have to do research on schools that offer like the best funding packages, but keep in mind that those schools are also going to be the most competitive schools, right? Like my cohort this year is 12 people. So I think 15 people got accepted and 12 people came. So they're really competitive if you want fully funded. Some people also have fellowships Like you can get fellowships from different external organizations, like the government sometimes, or like different organizations like nonprofit organizations or foundations. There are specific fellowships that may apply to you, and I encourage you to just go and do some research on it, because I know there are PhD programs that are fully funded, but those are going to be competitive. And as backup, you could also apply to something that isn't fully funded, or maybe is only partially funded for maybe 3 of the 5 years, but you can have an external fellowship to help you cover that extra cost. So yes, there are programs, there are PhD programs for computer science and engineering that are fully funded. Yeah. Nahadia said, I'm an engineering student. I really want a PhD, but cannot afford to pay for master's program and PhD. How did you get the school to pay for it? Yeah, so just what I said, it's part of the program, it's part of the fellowship, it's part of being admitted. So you just have to look into programs that will accept people without a master's and that are fully funded. But if you don't have a master's, make sure that you have done some work either on your own or maybe with a professor at a lab at another school, where you can prove that you have like some research skills or are really heavily interested and have done some work in this topic. KFly26, oh hey, you come to my lives sometimes. They asked, do you have to take classes in high school to get where you are? Or do you have to take certain classes in high school to get where you are? For me, it's interesting for me because I didn't do all of high school in the US. I lived in Thailand for 5 years, so I did the first 2 years of high school abroad and the last 2 years of high school in the States. But my last 2 years was in a public school. So when I was in high school, I took AP classes my last 2 years, and I took IB classes. I was in the International Baccalaureate program, which is kind of like AP, but it's global, like it's a global thing instead of a national thing. And it's kind of the equivalent of college courses. So you do certain higher levels and certain standard level courses. And I did higher level chemistry, literature, and drama, I think, and standard level math, something. I don't remember exactly what I did, but only a couple of those ended up transferring into credits. I think I got maybe 2 credits from high school, and I tested out of some stuff when I got to my undergrad institution. No, I mean, I think if your school offers AP, then you should be doing that, because that might accelerate your undergrad career if you want to finish early. But what I did to graduate early was I had 2 of the AP or IB credits, and then one summer I took 3 courses for summer school. And then what else did I do? Really not like anything super extra. My school is on the quarter system, and I took 4 classes per quarter. I never dropped a class. That's important. So some people I know at my school where I went to school for undergrad, they drop the class if they aren't doing well mid-quarter, so it doesn't affect their GPA. But I knew I wanted to graduate early, so I needed all 4 classes every single quarter. High school classes, not really. I mean, take AP if you have available, but not everyone has AP or IB at their school. So I'd say most of this groundwork was done when I actually got to college and not necessarily in high school. I also have a late birthday. My birthday's in October, so I was 17 when I graduated instead of 18, which accelerated it makes it seem like I finished college super young, but really I've always been young for my grade growing up. Ace X Save, I think, or Ace, they asked, how did I get all my degrees? I only have 1 degree right now, actually, like 1 complete degree. I'm just working on the other one, and by the time I finish, my program was 5 years. I started when I was 20. I'll be 25 when I finish. And when I finish, I'll have a BS, a master's, and a PhD. Thankfully for me, the master's and the PhD are kind of like mushed into one, because by default, you get the master's if you're in the PhD program. But how did I get all my degrees is just like I said, making sure that I stayed on track in undergrad and making sure that I knew I would be a strong candidate when I applied for this PhD program. Sam Stevenson _ asked, how do you stay motivated and not procrastinate during school? Man, I struggle a lot with procrastination. Man, I wish I had a better answer for this, because lately, especially with remote learning and quarantine, I've been procrastinating a lot because I'm just not motivated. But the way in undergrad that I did it was I took classes that I knew were interesting to me, And obviously not every class was like that. Some classes were just not, they were just super boring. But I made sure that the majority of my classes were things that I wouldn't want to procrastinate on because I was actually interested in the topic. Staying motivated, my motivation, once I figured out that I could graduate early, that was my motivation. I was like, wow, I can actually get out of here and skip a year of school. So that for me was my motivation. And I think also knowing that I wanted to go to grad school, like I figured out I wanted to go to grad school during my second year, at the beginning of my second year. So that served as a great motivation for me for the second and third year, which ended up being my last year, because I knew that I needed these grades to look good to top grad schools. So my motivation was always what I have coming up next. And maybe that's why I'm struggling with procrastination in grad school now, because I'm not really sure what's next. I could be a professor, and I really am passionate about teaching, and I think that would be a cool job to have, but who knows? You know, I'll only be 25, and I don't know if a 25-year-old professor is a life that I want to live yet, because, you know, I would have been in school my entire life. And even if I do a postdoctoral fellowship, I'm still within the system of academia. So I don't know what I'm going to do after this, and I think that's why I'm struggling with procrastination now, because I'm like, wow, I don't even know what I'm working toward. But in undergrad and high school, I was always motivated because I knew that I needed to do good now to be able to be where I wanted to be later. And that's what really kept me going, honestly. What is going on? What is going on here? What is this? Okay, you know what? We're just gonna flip her back over here. There we go. So even if you don't know exactly what you're gonna do afterwards, after school, just know that having good grades or doing what you can to have the highest GPA that you possibly can produce will pay off later. African.American asked, will being shy / an introvert hinder my ability to succeed in post-secondary? I don't think so. Well, I take that back. Don't be afraid to talk to professors. Other students, bleh, like they're whatever. But your professors and your TAs are really there to help you. I don't know if it'll hinder your ability to succeed, especially if you're a good student and efficient on your own. But a large part of post-secondary school is building connections, especially for job opportunities that arise after. So even if you are shy, I encourage you to, at least once you get to know a professor, or once you feel like you've had a couple lectures and you know that you would feel comfortable talking to them, don't be afraid to go and make connections. So I don't know if it'll hinder your success grades wise, but networking wise, it could hurt you if you don't really, you know, take your time to get to know people and what they're doing. For example, when I told you that I was interested in grad school during my second year, it was one class that I took, and that professor, I really, really liked him, and I ended up being kind of like a TA for him during my last year, because I liked his class and did well in his class. But it was a TA in his class that I met with, and I asked her, I was like, wow, you're doing a PhD in like technology design. How did you get here? And she told me everything that she did. And then I ended up doing one of the programs that she did that I didn't even know about until she told me. So people really do hold information, especially TAs and professors, that can really help advance you. Like if I hadn't done that, I wouldn't be in the same place because the classes wouldn't have been available to me. Like I had to apply to that program, and because I got in, I was able to take classes that were not available to everyone else. So I learned about that from that TA in that class, that I said, hey, you know, you're really cool. I really like your research. She did a presentation in class. So I emailed her and we talked for an hour. So it might not hinder your success grades wise, like I said, but I guarantee you that if you talk to your professors and your TAs, you will find opportunities that you wouldn't be able to find on your own. Muhammad Bul 1 asked, what is it like being a very young Black woman in a PhD program? It's interesting. Especially at an Ivy, there are times where I really know that this place was not built for me. And it's not that they're not doing a lot of work to make it better and like diversity and all that great stuff. But there are just times where I feel like I stick out like a sore thumb. I don't know. It's hard because my program is really small. So, I mean, there are smaller PhD programs, but compared to other programs on campus, it's pretty small. So when I'm in my homeschool, I really don't feel that bad. Like I don't feel like I stick out as much, but to like a broader audience, sometimes I'm worried that I'm not relatable. Okay, let me say this. I feel like a lot of times people have presumptions on what I'm gonna be like already because I'm a Black woman in a PhD program, and then when they get to know me, they're like, oh, you're not what I thought you were gonna be like at all. So it's really, I don't know how to say this. I've always gone to predominantly white institutions, and even in those situations, even in undergrad and now, I've always felt like I've had to forge my own path. And that's because there aren't many people who are at where I want to be. So mentorship is really difficult to find sometimes. So I feel like I'm having to pave my own path constantly. And that's okay. You know, I'm used to it at this point. But there are times where I'm like, wow, well, someone else can move through this system with a breeze and just be like, oh, well, I mean, obviously every PhD student is going to struggle, but they can move and be like, wow, like they have mentorship, they have support. And it's not that I don't have support from the institution. The question is so hard. Do you hear how much I'm stuttering? It's difficult to be a young Black woman in a PhD program. And I get a lot of questions about like, how did I get here? And a lot of people think it's impressive. And I appreciate that. But it's really hard sometimes, especially to find friends. I think the young part, the Black is okay. Like I have Black friends, but the young part, to be this young part is really hard for me sometimes. Sometimes I feel like I'm not relatable to other young people, or it's really hard to find other 21-year-olds who are in my position. And when I started my PhD program in August, I was only 20, so everyone else was going out and I didn't have a fake, so I couldn't go out, and it was kind of depressing. But now that I'm 21, it's light. Like I can actually hang out. So it's tough sometimes. Sometimes there's severe feelings of loneliness, but I'm okay. I think, I hope. That's where TikTok comes in. And when I posted that video about how I started my PhD and it got a lot of views, I think it has like over 50,000 likes or something. I was really surprised, and it made me happy because I was like, wow, people think it's cool. Like people think this is awesome. And then people like my funny content too. And I'm like, okay, I can be relatable to a wider audience. Like I am still young. I'm not 30, you know, like I can still be young. I can still be a 21-year-old and be in a PhD program. And reconciling those two identities has been a struggle for me, but I feel like I'm getting better. Haitian and Vegan said, finishing my BA this summer, should I try to apply for my PhD? If you want to, like if you're doing a PhD, you have to be really interested in research. Like research is the reason you do a PhD. If you're not interested in research and you're just interested in practice, then I would suggest doing a master's instead, or just going into the workforce. They Call Me Lil Racha said, I'm 19 and just added another major to stretch my undergrad to 4 years because I've been told PhD programs are less likely to accept you if they think they rushed through, if they think that you rushed through your bachelor's degree. Do you feel it was harder for you to be accepted into your program because of your age? Woo. People did tell me that it may be harder for me to get in because I am young or because I only have 3 years of school or research experience. But for me, I worked in a lab all 3 years of undergrad, so I had research experience, so that made it easier, I think, for institutions that I was applying to be like, okay, she actually has the ability to do this. I think that's what your application is all about, is knowing that you have the ability to be successful in this program. And it's also about program fit. Also, I had really good recommenders, and you know, I worked for one professor for 3 years. The professor that I told you about that I TA'd for, he wrote a rec for me. So I don't think that my numerical age didn't hurt me. And being there for 3 years also didn't hurt me because I did a lot in my 3 years. But if you have 3 years and haven't done anything like a thesis, or, I mean, I didn't do a thesis, but if you didn't do anything research like in your 3 years, then I could see how that would make it more difficult for you. So it may be helpful for you that you stretched it for 4 years, but if you added another major, I'd say as long as that major helps you fulfill whatever interest that you're going to want to do in your PhD or you think you want to do, it can change. I say that might be a good move if you feel like you weren't prepared after 3 years. I felt like I was ready to move on. Feeling when you're ready, making sure that you have like at least a broad area of interest. And if adding a major is what's going to help you expand a little bit and write a better research proposal for what you think you want to do, that might be a good move. Does that make sense? You can't answer me, but let me know if it didn't make sense, if I need to explain something better. Lol3 said, how do you deal with pressure and stress? It's been a struggle. Pressure, I try to not put pressure on myself anymore. In undergrad, a lot I did, but now that I've made it to where I think I want to be for now, I try to relieve some of the pressure. But I literally just the other night it felt like I had an epiphany where I was like, wow, I can really research what I'm interested in. And I don't have to do anything that, like, I don't have to write something just because I think that someone should write it. And I don't have to do research that I don't want to do just because I feel like it's lacking or because I feel like the top journals or conferences will like this type of research. I can do what I want to do, and whatever work is actually going to make me happy. I'm not going to slave away at doing something that isn't interesting to me on a deeper level to where I actually want to work on it. So that's why I decided to do like this TikTok research, and I think it'll be really fun. I think that I need to reorient myself to what really motivated me to be here in the first place. So dealing with pressure, I try to do better at that. Stress, I work out a lot. I love going to the gym and hanging out with my friends, like making sure that I have a life outside of school is something that I haven't always been good at. Now I'm trying to find a balance. So I hope that this was helpful. I hope that I answered your questions. I'm sorry this video has been kind of long, but I feel like I've gotten the same questions on repeat, so it would be nice to have a one video to answer all of them. If you feel like there's more that I can go into, let me know in the comments on this video and I will try to answer them to my best ability. So yeah, I guess general advice to take away from this video are research programs that fit you and that have the best funding packages for your situation. Like make the most of your time. I mean, that's what I tried to do, is just make the most of whatever situation I was in, whatever resource I had available, try to make them work to my advantage as much as possible in order to advance where I wanted to go, to do things that I wanted to do. And also, let me say this. One person was like, oh, well, you can't do that if you have to work all through college. Like, I worked all through college. In addition to the lab, y'all, the last quarter of school, I literally had 4 jobs. 4. I was doing social media for an IT department. I was working at the mall at J. Crew. I was driving students around for how they have the safe ride. You know how you can request a ride if it's after 6 p.m. and you can drive them around. I was driving students around from 6:30 p.m. to 3 a.m. and I was working at the lab. So I worked. I actually worked. I had to pay rent sometimes and, eat and do things and have money. So people who say oh, well, you only got to do what you got to do because you didn't have to work. I actually did. And I worked a lot. I worked a lot. So I didn't get here. It wasn't an easy road. It was not an easy road, but I did it. I did it. And sometimes I have to remind myself that I can slow down and be proud of myself for a while. The program is 5 years and I have 4 years left. I can take a minute to be like, whew, okay, we're here now. Congratulations. You did it, bitch. It wasn't easy. And a lot of people say I made it look easy, but I was working a lot. And there were times where it got tough. So yeah, if there's anything else that I can answer for y'all, let me know. And I'll see you back on TikTok. Bye, guys.